Allah, oh Allah, Jale Shan Allah.
In today's day and age, the word jihad itself has given a lot of contention, assumed a lot of contention between Muslim groups, Muslim scholars, different parts of the civil society, and those who are at the steering wheel of the states, whether jihad is allowed or not. Obviously, the greater jihad is not only allowed, it has also been expressed by certain ulema, certain religious authorities of the Islamic tradition as a sixth pillar of the deen, sixth pillar of the faith, the sixth article of the faith that is almost as necessary as the other five that are minimum requirements of being a Muslim. A famous poet in Urdu has said, Palang-o-Ajdeha wa sher-o-nar maa'ra to kiya maa'ra, barre mozee ko maa'ra to nafs-e-ammara ko gar maa'ra. That you can kill all sorts of beasts and acts of heroism and chivalry, but the greatest out of them all is suppressing the lower elements of one's soul. And that establishes the Quranic notion of the jihad as not only belonging to the ibaadaat, but also muamilaat, which is the acts of worship and the acts of dealing with others. One must strive always to be perfect and doing the act, any act, as beautifully as possible. And all of that is understood within the Islamic theory of jihad. The question then arises in today's atmosphere where the adversarial relationship of the Western world and the Muslim world has become so acute as to whether the lesser jihad, which is taking up of arms against the perceived enemy, is it justified, is it warranted or not? And it may seem as if the greater jihad, which is jihad against the nafs, against the lower proclivities of human soul, has somehow paled and faded in significance. And it must be restated here that neither have lost their significance today from a spiritual point of view. It becomes very necessary in today's world because it is important to mention that the challenges to the Muslim world are material and military later. They are intellectual and spiritual first. Only the lesser jihad can make more sense if there is armed resistance to be taken against certain perceived enemies, that the agents of jihad undertaking jihad must practice the ethos of the Prophet and Sayyidina Ali. The Muslims certainly have the right to armed resistance. If their territories have been encroached upon, if there's unnecessary bloodshed that is happening within the Dar al-Islam, the abode of Islam, the Muslims, like all other nations, actually have the right to have armed resistance against such enemies. The question is, what is the best method in the light of the spirit of jihad to accomplish this? And one must recall figures such as Amir Abdul Qadir, Abdul Karim, Imam Shamil of Dagestan, and lately Ahmad Shah Massoud in Afghanistan, who are actually spiritual authorities, mostly coming from the Sufi tradition, who actually waged a very effective battle against their perceived enemies. But their method was not to imitate the brutality and the methods of the enemy. The Quran has said that you must retaliate kindly. You must do the act with goodness. These enemies that you're fighting today will be your brothers in truth tomorrow. So be kind and gentle even while waging a war, which is lesser jihad. And it is very important for the Muslims to understand the combined significance of lesser and greater jihad, because there is no divorce between the two. It is essentially coming from the same root, and one can make the other better. And finally, it is important to mention that those Muslim agents who are involved in carrying out the lesser jihad, it must never be done with bitterness, anger, and violence. Once upon a time, Imam Ali, the fourth caliph of Islam, had subdued his enemy, and he was going to slay his enemy sitting on top of his chest, when the enemy, as a last act of defiance, spat on his face. Upon that, Imam Ali put his sword in the scabbard and dismounted. And the enemy asked as to why he did that. He said, I was going to slay you in the name of God and truth, but you spat on me, that made me angry, if I killed you now, that would be my personal vengeance. And this is the type of impact that needs to be left on the adversaries of Islam.